On the night before her wedding, Naomi slipped quietly into her childhood home with a love letter clutched to her chest, only to find her fiancé in bed with the one woman she trusted most, her mother. What followed wasn't a scream, but a silence so sharp it split her life in two. In front of a church full of witnesses, she tore off the veil of lies and walked away from the altar, the betrayal, and the life that was never truly hers. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The house was quiet, almost too quiet for the eve of a wedding. Naomi pressed her back gently against the oak door, easing it shut behind her with practiced silence. She had tiptoed across these hardwood floors since childhood, and her steps still remembered the creaks to avoid. In her hand was a cream-colored envelope, thick with the handwritten letter she had stayed up writing, a letter of love, promises, nerves, and dreams. Marcus had said he was staying over at her mother's place to help set things up for the reception in the morning. "It's just easier," he'd texted, adding a winking emoji. Naomi hadn't questioned it. Evelyn adored Marcus, almost too much in hindsight. She chalked it up to her mother's flamboyant charm, her constant need to be at the center of everything. But tonight, Naomi felt something tugging at her, an urge to come by unexpectedly and slide her letter under his door. A sweet, romantic surprise. The kind of thing a bride does when her heart is full. The dim glow of a lamp was still on in the guest wing, flickering from beneath the crack of the door. Naomi stepped closer, her heels in hand now, bare feet brushing against the runner rug. The silence should have warned her. It wasn't peaceful. It was thick, muffled, alive with something unsaid. She reached for the door. Not Marcus's door, but the room her mother sometimes used when guests stayed over. Why would the light be on at this hour? She heard it before she saw it. The faint rustle of fabric, a low chuckle, the intimate hum of whispered voices. Naomi froze, confusion building like a pressure behind her eyes. Her knuckles hovered above the door. Then, before her mind could stop her, her hand pushed gently, just enough to see. And there they were. Evelyn. Marcus. Her fiancé. Her mother. Naked. Entwined. Moving. Laughing. Time didn't freeze. It shattered. Naomi didn't gasp. She didn't scream. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She felt her heartbeat in her teeth, in her fingertips, in the pit of her stomach where the world dropped like a stone. She couldn't even blink. Her mother's legs wrapped around Marcus's waist. His hand was on her neck the way he used to touch Naomi when he said, "I love you," like it was sacred. They didn't see her. They were too busy betraying her. Naomi stepped back slowly, the door easing shut as if it knew how close she was to collapse. Her vision blurred. The letter was still in her hand, crushed now in a trembling fist. She walked backwards down the hallway like a child waking from a nightmare. At the front door, she paused, pressing a hand to her chest to keep herself from falling apart. Outside, the night was crisp. The sky was too beautiful for the cruelty she had just witnessed. Naomi walked to her car on autopilot, sat inside, and locked the doors. Then she let the silence engulf her. The betrayal didn't hit like a scream. It arrived like a storm at sea, vast, heavy, and without a horizon. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. Not yet. Her mind refused to believe what her eyes had already confirmed. Her phone buzzed on the seat beside her. Marcus. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my beautiful bride." Red heart. Naomi stared at the screen. And for the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to die without dying. The morning sun pierced through the ivory curtains of Naomi's bedroom, casting golden patterns across the bed she hadn't slept in. She hadn't gone home the night before. Instead, she had driven to a quiet overlook on the edge of town, watching the stars dissolve into the pink haze of dawn. Her hands never loosened from the steering wheel. Her dress, veil, bouquet, all waiting in the guest room. Her future was waiting at the church. So were her mother. And Marcus. She stood now in front of the mirror, face bare, eyes hollow but focused. She was already in her wedding gown. Her maid of honor, Simone, hovered in the doorway. "You okay, babe?" Simone asked, her voice light, unaware. "You're so calm. I thought you'd be a mess." Naomi turned to her, lips curling slightly. "I am a mess," she said quietly. "I just hide it well." Simone laughed, thinking it was a joke. She fluttered in and adjusted Naomi's veil. "You're going to be stunning. Marcus is gonna cry when he sees you." Naomi didn't flinch. She looked at herself again, head tilted slightly, as if studying a stranger. Her phone buzzed again. "Mom, on our way to the church. So proud of you. Today is your beginning. Red heart." Naomi's fingers trembled. Not with fear. Not anymore. With clarity. The limousine ride to the church felt like drifting through glass. Everything delicate, fragile, silent. Naomi stared out the window as the buildings passed by like ghosts. When they pulled up to the cathedral, the music had already begun to swell. Guests were seated. Ushers were handing out programs that read, "Naomi Rose Whitaker and Marcus Elijah Bennett. Forever begins today." She almost laughed. The heavy doors loomed ahead of her, tall and sacred. Naomi took Simone's hand briefly and squeezed. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "just stand with me, okay?" "Of course," Simone said, frowning in confusion. "You're scaring me." Naomi took her place behind the grand oak doors. The music changed. The organist began the bridal march. And with the strength of a woman betrayed but unbroken, Naomi stepped forward. The aisle stretched endlessly. Everyone turned. Gasps and smiles erupted like applause as she walked, radiant, composed, ethereal. Cameras flashed. Her father, who had flown in from abroad, waited to escort her down the last steps of the aisle. Naomi waved him off gently and walked alone. Marcus stood at the altar beaming. Hands folded in front of him. His eyes shimmered with fake awe, the way he had practiced in the mirror, no doubt. Behind him, Evelyn stood next to the priest, dressed in a pale blue gown. Elegant, polished, a proud mother of the bride. Naomi reached the altar and stood across from Marcus. "Ready, my love?" he whispered. Naomi blinked slowly. "Are you?" The priest began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of God and these witnesses to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Naomi felt each word like a weight on her chest. He continued, "If any person can show just cause why they may not be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." The church went still. You could hear the hush of breath, the far-off whisper of wind through stained glass. Naomi turned to the priest, holding up her hand. "I'm sorry," she said calmly, clearly. "But before we proceed, there's something I need to say." A murmur moved through the crowd. Marcus smiled awkwardly. "Naomi, what are you doing?" Naomi stepped forward, just slightly, her eyes scanning every guest, every face. "I want to thank you all for coming," she said. "This is a day I've dreamed of since I was a little girl. A day of love, of truth." She turned then, first to Marcus, then to Evelyn. "And truth is sacred. More sacred than love. More sacred than ceremony." Evelyn's smile faltered. Marcus looked confused. "What's going on?" Naomi took a breath. Her voice never shook. "Last night, I came to this church. I brought a letter for Marcus. A surprise. I walked in through the side door. I didn't knock. I should have." The crowd leaned in. You could hear nothing but her voice and the silence hanging off of it. "I saw my fiancé and my mother in bed together." A gasp surged through the pews like thunder. Whispers exploded. Cameras dropped. Evelyn's hand flew to her chest. "That's a lie," she shouted, but her voice cracked. Marcus stepped forward. "Naomi, what the hell are you talking about?" She turned to him slowly. Her eyes locked on his. "Tell them, Marcus. Tell them where you were last night. Or should my mother do it?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Naomi looked to the priest. "This ceremony is over." And then she turned away. The veil trailed behind her like smoke. The bouquet dropped at the foot of the altar. She walked back down the aisle alone. No music, no applause, no groom. Only silence. the kind that shakes a church to its bones. Naomi drove in silence. No music, no crying, no talking. Just the low hum of her engine and the thrum of blood behind her eyes. She didn't head to Simone's. She didn't answer the dozens of calls or texts flooding her phone from friends, family, or the church. She went home. Her childhood home. The house where everything had bloomed and now everything had rotted. When she walked in, the house looked almost exactly as it had the night before. Her mother's heels were by the stairs. The scent of vanilla candles lingered in the air. And on the kitchen counter, her carefully laid out wedding checklist sat next to an untouched cup of tea Evelyn had brewed earlier that morning. Naomi walked past it all, up the stairs, through the hallway she once danced down in pajamas when she got into college, and into the guest room. The bed was neatly made. The sheets had been changed. There were no obvious signs of betrayal now. No rumpled linens or forgotten articles of clothing. Just the ghost of a moment. Naomi stood at the doorway and whispered to no one, "I saw you." She closed the door slowly, then turned and went to her own room. The dress had already been hung on its mannequin again, as if it were waiting for a second chance. She stared at it for a long time. Ivory silk, hand-stitched lace, buttons up the back like pearls down a spine. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was a lie. Naomi unzipped the back, peeled the dress off her body like she was shedding a skin, and stood naked before her mirror. She looked at her reflection, expecting to see something ruined. But what she saw was raw. Not broken, just unfinished. Like something yet to be carved. She opened her closet. Found a pair of denim overalls, a black tank top, and her oldest boots. She tied her hair into a high, unbothered bun. She didn't put on makeup. She didn't hide her puffy eyes or the faint tremor in her lip. She went downstairs, grabbed a bottle of lighter fluid from the garage, then walked out to the garden. The backyard had always been Evelyn's pride. A lush rectangle of lavender, white roses, and red hibiscus framed by stone benches and solar lights. It was peaceful here, sacred even. Naomi had held birthday parties here. Prom photos had been taken under the wisteria arch, and once, when she was 15, she had kissed a boy for the first time behind the trellis. But now? Now it would become a graveyard. She placed the dress in the center of the brick-paved patio, folded it gently, almost reverently. She paused. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but not for Marcus. Not even for her mother. It was for the little girl who once believed this moment would be magic. She poured the lighter fluid slowly, watching the fabric darken and glisten with fuel. Then she struck a match. And the moment it caught, the hiss, the flare, the sudden pop of flames, something inside her cracked open. The fire rose quickly, devouring the silk, biting at the lace like a vengeful spirit. The buttons burst one by one in tiny, glassy pops. Smoke curled upward, black and gray, and the scent of scorched dreams filled the summer air. Naomi stepped back. Her eyes reflected the flames. And for the first time since seeing them in bed, she screamed. A long guttural scream. Raw and furious. From her gut. From her bones. From years of swallowing silence. Birds scattered from the trees. A neighbor peeked through their blinds, but Naomi didn't care. She screamed again. Louder. And then collapsed to her knees in the dirt. She didn't sob. She howled. The fire raged. By the time it burned down to smoldering embers, her throat was hoarse. Her fingers were covered in ash. Her eyes were bloodshot but dry. She stared into the charred skeleton of what had been her wedding dress and whispered, "I bury you here." All of it. The lies. The plans. The version of me who would have forgiven this. She stood. Took the garden hose, doused the last flicker of flame, and turned toward the house. Not once did she look back. The cabin was small, tucked in the hills 2 hours outside the city. Wood-paneled walls, creaky floorboards, a porch that overlooked a lake black as obsidian at night. There was no TV, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just Naomi, the silence, and her thoughts. It had been 17 days since she walked out of the church. 17 days since she shattered the illusion. In that time, she hadn't spoken to Evelyn. Not once. Marcus had sent 12 voicemails, 14 texts, one rambling email filled with half-formed apologies and desperate rationalizations. She hadn't read it. Her phone now lived inside a drawer, wrapped in a scarf, next to her old journals and a forgotten charm bracelet from college. Some mornings, Naomi would sit on the porch with coffee and just listen. The wind through the trees, the distant cry of loons across the lake, her own breath. These were the sounds that reminded her she was still alive. Still here. Still whole, though cracked in places. One afternoon, while organizing the bottom of her duffel bag, Naomi found something that made her chest seize. The letter. The letter she had written for Marcus the night before the wedding. Folded, untouched. Cream envelope. A wax seal with their initials pressed together. M+N. Her fingers trembled as she held it. For a long time, she sat by the window, staring at the envelope in her lap, unsure if she wanted to read it or burn it. Eventually, she slid her finger beneath the seal and unfolded the pages. Her own handwriting looked foreign to her now. The loops too innocent, the tone too soft. Marcus, tomorrow I become your wife. That sentence makes my heart race in the best way. I've waited my whole life to meet someone who makes the world feel steady. You are my anchor, my fire, my best friend. I know we'll have hard days, but I trust us. I trust you. Thank you for choosing me, for loving me with your whole heart. I promise to never take that for granted. I can't wait to grow old with you. Yours always, Naomi. She read it 3 times. Each word felt like a punch. A joke. A relic from a life that had never actually existed. Naomi didn't cry. Instead, she went to the fireplace, knelt down, and fed the letter to the flame. It curled and crumbled in silence, a slow funeral for something naive. When the ashes had settled, she sat at her desk, a heavy mahogany thing that had belonged to the cabin's previous owner, and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. She didn't rush. She thought. She felt. Then she began to write. To the woman I'm becoming. You didn't deserve what happened. You didn't cause it. You didn't miss a sign or fail to be enough. They were broken before they ever touched your world. You are not weak because you love them. You are not foolish for believing in the goodness of people. You are not defined by what they did in secret. This pain is yours now. But so is the power. You will not walk backward. You will not harden into bitterness. You will rise slowly, yes, but you will rise with clarity and grace. Your peace will not be their punishment. It will be your revolution. With love. Me. She folded the letter and placed it in a wooden box on the windowsill. No seal, no initials. Just a single word written on the outside, truth. That night it rained. The sound of droplets tapping the cabin roof reminded Naomi of lullabies she hadn't thought about since she was a child. She wrapped herself in a blanket and stepped barefoot onto the porch. The lake glistened in the darkness. The storm did not frighten her. It calmed her. Because now she knew. The woman who had once been defined by someone else's love was learning to define herself by her own. It was the first clear morning in a week. The rain had finally stopped, and sunlight slipped through the trees like golden silk. Naomi stood on the edge of the porch, coffee in hand, wrapped in a cardigan that smelled faintly of cedar and old perfume. Her breath formed soft clouds in the cool mountain air. She had begun to feel the rhythm of solitude. There was no timeline, no pressure to heal. Some days she painted. Other days she sat by the lake and watched the ripples form from nothing, then disappear like they had never been. She had even begun to laugh again, soft, surprised laughter that came while reading or while brushing her teeth. The kind of laugh that felt like it didn't need permission. It was on a morning like this, while the birds returned to their usual chatter, that the knock came. It wasn't loud. Just 3 soft raps. Naomi's spine straightened. Her heart beat once, hard in her chest. She moved slowly, mug set down, cardigan drawn tighter, bare feet silent on the floorboards. When she opened the door, the world seemed to pause. Evelyn stood there. No makeup. No carefully styled curls. Just loose, graying hair pulled back in a clip and eyes that had once been vibrant but now looked haunted. Naomi didn't speak. Neither did Evelyn. For a moment, they just stared at each other, two women who had once shared blood, laughter, secrets, and now shared a wound too deep to speak of. "I had to see you," Evelyn said finally, her voice hoarse. Naomi said nothing. Her grip on the doorknob remained still. "I didn't come to beg," Evelyn continued. I know what I did. I can't explain it. I can't even believe it myself most days. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the woman who did that to her daughter." Naomi's eyes flicked down to her mother's hands, nervously twisting the strap of a leather purse. Evelyn followed her gaze, then dropped the bag by her feet, stepping forward just slightly. "Marcus is gone," she said quietly. "Left the city. I think he moved back to Chicago. I haven't heard from him since the week after the wedding." Still, Naomi said nothing. "I lost everything, Naomi," Evelyn continued, her voice cracking. "My friends, my reputation, you. I haven't slept. I've tried, God, I've tried, to understand what happened inside me to make me betray you like that. I don't expect you to forgive me. Her voice broke completely. "I just needed to say it. Out loud. In front of you. I was wrong. I was selfish. And I will carry this shame for the rest of my life." Naomi looked at her mother. At her once immaculate posture, now slouched with guilt. At her trembling fingers. At the lines around her mouth that had deepened with sorrow. She didn't see the woman who had held her hand at graduations or kissed her bruises after playground tumbles. She saw a stranger. A broken one. "I've been writing letters," Evelyn said suddenly, reaching into her coat pocket and pulling out a bundle. "Every day since the wedding. I didn't send them. I just wrote." Naomi took the stack, but didn't open it. "I'll go," Evelyn said softly. "I just thank you for opening the door." Naomi finally spoke. "I didn't do it for you." Evelyn's face stiffened. "I opened it for me," Naomi said. "To prove to myself that I could face you and not collapse." Evelyn nodded slowly. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. Naomi watched her mother turn, pick up her bag, and walk slowly down the cabin steps. As Evelyn reached the bottom, Naomi called out, voice firm, unwavering. "I hope you find peace." Evelyn turned back, stunned. "But not here," Naomi added. "Not with me." A pause. Then the door closed. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. But with finality. Inside, Naomi stood for a moment, the bundle of letters still in her hand. She considered tossing them into the fire, but instead placed them in a drawer. Not out of forgiveness, but as evidence. A reminder. A chapter of her life that would no longer write itself into her future. She walked to the mirror, looked at herself, taller somehow. Her breath came slowly, calmly. The ghost had come. She had opened the door. And she had survived. The hill was steep and lined with wildflowers, stubborn little things that had pushed through dry earth and late frost to bloom anyway. Naomi stood at the top, overlooking the lake that had been her quiet witness for months. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of lavender and deep indigo in the sky. Soon the stars would come out. She could feel them already, just beneath the surface, waiting to pierce the night. Her dress tonight wasn't silk or lace. It was a simple, flowing gown the color of bone and storm clouds, cinched at the waist with a leather cord. Her hair was loose. Her hands were bare. There was no bouquet, no veil, no ring. But there was something else. A lantern. And around her, 5 others held their own. Simone was there, her best friend, her constant, the only one who hadn't asked too many questions, but had never stopped showing up. Alongside her stood Lena, Naomi's cousin, who had cried harder than Naomi at the scandal, but never judged her for how long it took to feel again. There was Caleb, a quiet soul she had met at a grief retreat weeks prior, who knew loss too intimately to speak of it. And 2 others, both friends from long ago who had quietly returned to her life like birds migrating home. Naomi turned to them. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. "I know this isn't conventional." Simone smiled. "Neither are you." They all laughed soft, warm laughter, like firelight flickering across the dark. Naomi took a breath and looked up. The year's almost over, and I didn't want to end it the way it began. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded card. It was not addressed to anyone. She opened it and began to read, her voice low but sure. Today, I marry no one but myself. I do not need a witness to tell me I am whole. I do not need a vow from someone else to know I am worthy of love, of gentleness, of joy. I make this promise to the girl who waited in silence, to the woman who walked away, and to the soul who refused to be buried in someone else's shame. I vow to speak even when my voice shakes, to feel everything, even the unbearable, to never again shrink myself to make someone comfortable, and to walk boldly into the life that is mine and mine alone. She folded the card and set it gently on the ground. Then, one by one, the group lit their lanterns, thin paper spheres, glowing with small flames inside, trembling in the breeze. Naomi held hers in both hands. I release everything, she whispered to the night. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the need for answers. I release the version of me who waited to be chosen. She let the lantern go. It rose, weightless, into the dark, joining the others as they floated higher and higher. The stars had finally come. Simone reached for Naomi's hand. You did it, she said softly. Naomi shook her head. No, she replied. I started. She looked up at the sky, at the lights she had made, at the ones that had been there all along. The wind danced around her. It smelled of pine and something sweeter, like new beginnings. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like someone who had been left behind. She felt like someone who had arrived.